this is my review of Solar Opposites. Okay, so in this episode, Korvo kind of has a little bit of a hissy fit regarding social parties, which it winds up having a bit of an interesting, little side story with that, and also we get to see inside the wall again for the first time this season. So yay! So yeah, I'll get to the wall in a minute, but basically the wall's story is kind of interesting in this part because it's kind of a murder mystery this time around. So yeah. The last time it was a civil war, this time it's a murder mystery, and I'm kind of interested to see how that's going to shape out. But in any case, it starts off with Yumyulack and Jessy in a coffee shop, and they overhear a guy boasting loudly about his social media status and generally being kind of an asshole. And then Yumyulack shrinks him down and decides to put him in the wall. Which Jessy doesn't protest too much to Yumyulack's disappointment because it was kind of their whole thing in the first season, and he's kind of a little bit sad that she's not getting upset with him anymore over it. But he does kind of like doing it because, as he points out, he likes observing how people actually interact with each other once they're inside a new environment. And yeah, with that he puts the new guy in the wall. I forget what his name actually is, but he goes into the wall, and I'll get to all of that in a minute. But for right now, it then cuts back to him to Yumyulack going to dinner with Korvo, and Korvo calls for Terry and Jessy to come to dinner because their food is getting cold. Only for Terry to respond that he's not going to be eating because he's going to be going to a dinner party. And Jessy is coming along with, and she's also going to be performing a duet with the pupa. So, yeah, she brings the pupa with. So yeah, they're going to be going to a dinner party, and they're not going to be able to eat dinner. And Korvo gets a little bit upset with them because he not want to just kind of eat dinner alone and want their food to go to waste, but he actually just wants to go with them and go to their social gathering. And while Terry is initially skeptical about the idea of bringing Korvo and Yumyulack along, mainly because he can't just add a +2 to his invite regardless out of the blue. Korvo then pulls out the Earth Eraser, the titular device behind this episode, and threatens to use it to disintegrate the Earth if he's not allowed to come with. So Terry relents and lets him come with, but he points out that he needs to get a nice shirt first. Which they do, and then they proceed to go to the party, but it quickly becomes apparent that Korvo isn't really good at the whole social situation setting. Because everybody there is talking about wine etiquette, and he has a hard time following along with what's going on. And then they also host a celebrity naming thing where someone pulls a list of celebrities out of a bowl, and everybody else has to guess. And Korvo quickly gets flustered and overwhelmed, and so does Yumyulack because they have no idea what they're doing. And eventually it winds up getting to the point where he and Terry have a bit of a falling out, and Terry asks him to leave because they're embarrassing him and also kind of ruining the party by just being themselves. And long story short, they just kind of ruin the party because due to the fact that they're just doing slurping stuff. They're calling out people. They're just kind of generally being rude. They're trying to fit in with the social standing of people that they don't really understand, and truthfully told, everybody else is being very upper class about it because again they're talking about wine etiquette and wine production at a social gathering. So obviously they're a little bit they're kind of chastising Korvo for not knowing all of this stuff, even though that isn't common knowledge. I don't even know what proper wine etiquette. It's like if you know proper wine etiquette, you probably go to a lot of parties. So yeah, I don't know that information. Not many people know that information. So they kind of rub Korvo the wrong way, and he's understandably upset. And also they rub him the wrong way for not knowing certain celebrities, even though again he's an alien. He doesn't know any human celebrities. He only knows the Schlopian ones. So. But after that, he decides to leave with Yumyulack, and they decide to go back to the house. And Yumyulack and Korvo begin to discuss their options, pointing out that they hate dinner parties and don't want to actually go back to them. And Yumyulack suggests that they use the DNA splicer to just kind of break everybody down, but Korvo points out that if they do that, then they'll just hold another party, and he doesn't want them to hold another party. So he comes up with a better and somewhat more convoluted idea. Basically what he does is they take a taxi to Washington, D.C., use the gold creator from the last episode, and then proceed to use that to bribe a governor to convince the rest of the government, of the U.S. government, to outlaw parties. And Korvo is made a deputy officer, and Yumyulack are made deputy officers, and are allowed to use force if necessary to keep everybody from going to parties. So yeah, they even have their own little team underneath them, and Terry eventually finds out about this by reading a newspaper, which as a bit of a fourth wall joke, he spins on his finger to replicate the spinning newspaper effect that's used in all of the movies. You know what I'm talking about, where the newspaper comes up on the headlines and screens, and then just freeze frames on the thing. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. But in any case, Korvo and Yumyulack immediately begin going to work, and they start going to social gatherings, checking them out, and making sure that nobody is violating the law, because again, he now made dinner parties illegal, and even starts arresting people for hosting dinner parties, because that is the thing that he's been assigned to do now. And eventually Terry catches wind of it and finds out what's going on. And then Korvo merely threatens him, pointing out that he should stay away from dinner parties for his own good, pointing out that now that they're illegal, that Terry is very likely to get arrested if he's found at any dinner parties. But Terry merely remarks that that he doesn't need to listen to them, and that they don't scare him, and then proceeds to think of ways to actually get around the whole law of that's now bullshit. The bullshit law that keeps him from going to dinner parties. He tries to work a way around that. So, and also Jessy and the pupa have a bit of a falling out, because Jessy kind of insulted the pupa's performance at the party that they were at, and the pupa decided to retaliate by getting his own partner, which she doesn't last long. I'll get to that in a minute. But in case Korvo and Yumyulack continue to patrol the cities looking for parties, and even in one instance, Terry and Jessy not so subtly imply that they're going to a party by bringing a breakdancing board to donate to Goodwill, and then are also dressed up really nice. And Korvo and Yumyulack immediately suspect something is wrong and go to investigate, and they do follow them, only to discover a bar in a residential house, and that there's no party being held there at all. Which, as it turns out, is actually a clever trick by Terry to actually convince Korvo and his posse to leave them alone, so that they can hold the party in peace. And it's only after they leave that they realize that they've been tricked, and then realize that they've been tricked with sci-fi technology, and considering that that's their bit, they then proceed to think of a way around it. And Yumyulack suggests lethal force, which becomes a recurring thing through this episode, but Korvo is against using lethal force, at least initially. I'll get to that in a minute. And decides instead to wire up some androids to the internet, so that he can scan for evites and know when a party is happening before they can happen, and bust them ahead of time. Which doesn't work, because every time they go to arrive at a party, Terry has some new sci-fi technology bullshit that he uses to disguise the party and keep anybody else from figuring it out. And eventually Korvo and Yumyulack continue to get more and more frustrated. And eventually Korvo realizes that in addition to using sci-fi bullshit, Terry has been sending in-paper emails to people to keep in-paper mail to people to keep Korvo from actually figuring out the party, so that they can party in peace. So yeah, he basically starts sending out paper invites to keep Korvo away from him. And Korvo is just quick to remark that Terry should again watch his step, because even though he's his team leader, that he won't hesitate to arrest Terry when he eventually slips up and is eventually caught. And Terry again really remarks that Korvo doesn't scare him, So at which point Korvo decides to authorize lethal excessive force. So basically, long story short is Yumyulack is over the moon about the fact that he gets to use excessive force, and then proceeds to show off two biomechanically engineered creatures that he created called Labradoodles, which I'll get to in a minute. But effectively, he sets them loose on the nearest party, and they proceed to go to town and start eating people, and then turning them into wine. So yeah, Yumyulack effectively uses his new monster creations to turn people into wine, and it's from the trailer. It's a very funny moment, but effectively Korvo realizes that if Terry is caught, he'll be turned into wine, and quickly realizes that he needs to get to the next party that Terry's at before the Labradoodles do. And even tries to message Terry, telling him that he's in danger if he goes to another party. Only for Terry to chide him and kind of just play it all off. But in any case, Korvo does arrive at the party shortly after the Labradoodles show up and start turning people into wine, and is just barely able to save Terry. So, at which point he leads Terry back to the van. And explains that he's in danger, only for the Labradoodles to become trapped in the van because they realize that there's something party related in the van, and tried to tear it apart. But even though there's nothing in there, at which point they escape on scooters made from birds. Yes. And proceed to escape to a Whole Foods, which Korvo realizes is worse because Whole Foods is basically a giant social gathering because of how it's structured. So yeah, the Labradoodles will naturally have a very fun time there. And quickly realizing that they'll be killed if they stay there for too long, they proceed to use various foods to disguise themselves to give themselves a single person in birthday scent. And as they're doing that, hiding from the Labradoodles, and as the Labradoodles break into the Whole Foods and start eating people, Korvo finally confesses that the reason he decided to do all this was because he was tired of Terry leaving him out. Basically, he wanted to be. They used to go out all the time together, and obviously they don't do that much anymore because, well, long story short, streaming services. Everybody came to all the stars came to them, so they no longer had a reason to go out. So Terry started partying with other people instead because he kind of got sick of hanging around with Korvo. So, and Terry quickly realizes that that is part of the reason why there's been a conflict between the two. And even apologizes for the fact that he's been partying so much without Korvo, and that he's going to make more of an effort to host party nights with Korvo instead. Which he does do by the end of the episode, by the way. He does eventually host a party with Korvo, and Korvo and the other replicants do have a party night at their own house. So yeah, he does stay true to that promise. But as they're making promises to one another, the Labradoodles come by them and sniff them, and Korvo pretends to be a birthday gathering, which you guys probably know what that means. But he pretends to be a birthday gathering in order to get the Labradoodles off the scent, only for Terry to immediately bring up apples and get them discovered anyway. At which point they're rescued by Jessy and the pupa, and Jessy merely remarks that the reason they're working together is because the pupa's former partner got eaten by a Labradoodle. I told you she didn't last very long, but in any case they escape, and then Korvo voices that they should go back to Washington D.C. and get the law changed back so that they can continue to have social gatherings and get rid of the Labradoodle so that they're no longer able to use lethal force to kill people and turn them into wine. So they do exactly that in a scene very reminiscent of the original, where they go and they bribe the governor, and he completely reverses the law, and now social gatherings are legal again. And again, as I said, they go back to hosting. Terry is a man of his word, or Schlorpian of his word, I guess in this case, and they have a social gathering that's more tailored to Korvo's specific needs. They have some wine. They play a celebrity guessing game with Schlorpian names instead of human ones, and then they just continue to have a good time. And then Yumyulack barges in, pointing out that he's now finally gathered up everybody's wine and is now able to begin reversing the process. Pointing out that the only reason he turned everybody into wine was because they were criminals. But now that nobody's a criminal, he has to let them go and turn them back into people, which works. And which isn't very comfortable for the Labradoodles, since the way the Labradoodles turn people into wine is to eat them, and then a wine bottle comes in, and then they poop out the wine bottle with the people's wine in them. So yeah, it's a kind of just more disturbing in reverse, because Yumyulack has to shove the wine bottle up the Labradoodle's ass, and then it comes out the front. So yeah, is a little bit disturbing. And Korvo even remarks that they may or may not have drank somebody because they didn't realize that the process could be reversed. But they do indeed succeed in that. But they do succeed in turning everybody back into people, and that's where that side of the story ends. But there is a B side of the story, which is the wall. So we've discussed. So throughout this entire episode, the wall is just kind of off doing its own little thing, as it has been for the last season. And this episode, as I said, starts off as a murder mystery. So it starts off with the guy Yumyulack shrink down being sent into the wall, and as we quickly find out, while Tim is kind of a bit of a murderous dickhead. In case in point, he presumably killed Sherry and knocked her out of the wall, or at the very least badly wounded her and kept her out of the wall. He has kind of been a man of his word and has kind of tried to create a utopian society within the wall. Case in point, everything is a lot cleaner and neater than when he went in, and everybody is able to live satisfying lives in there. At which point the guy is met by the wall greeter Mia. And Mia is multilingual, so that everybody can actually understand her when they come in, regardless of where they come from. So, the guy comes in. He's a little overwhelmed at first, but eventually she begins to explain the history of the wall, including the fabricated story about how Sherry died fighting the Duke, which we know isn't true because we watched the last season. I watched the last season and reviewed it for you guys because some of you voiced your concerns about being able to afford Hulu. But in the last season, we found out that Tim is actually even more of a dictator than the Duke was, and kicked Sherry out of the wall because she threatened to undermine his power. So yeah, other than that though, everything is basically on the up and up. Everything is above board. And she then explains that, and then Mia then begins to explain to the man. I don't remember his name, and it's not important for reasons that I'll get to at the end. But she explains that everybody here is free to choose their own positions and what they want to do. And the man merely remarks that he always wanted to be a fashion designer. And which he remarks that he has never said out loud before. And she tells him that that's possible in the wall, and then proceeds to tell him that he'll start his new job tomorrow, and that he'll be able to she'll actually put in an order for a new dress that she needs for the upcoming Sherry Day, which if you guys remember was actually made to honor Sherry's sacrifice. So yeah, he's put into a house. He's given a delivery by the new food guy, who, again, I don't remember his name, but he's kind of, sort of, maybe not important. He is and he isn't. He's the one who gets the plot started, but he shows up, gives the guy his food, and then goes on his merry way. And then he goes to another guy named Harv, who basically, long story short, is according to the delivery guy, is a war hero. He fought in the War of the Wall. He helped save a lot of people. Although, as we find out later in the arc, he actually has a bit of a lingering regret over the people he wasn't able to save. So, yeah. But he very much was a warrior and helped make the wall the way it is now. So he proceeds to, and then the man proceeds to thank him for all of his hard work, and also points out that he wish he could be more like him going forward. So, and with that he leaves, and at which point Harv's wife, again, I don't remember her name, and I don't think they gave her a name, but she remarks that she's glad he's still doing his deliveries. At which point Harv proposes to his new girlfriend, who who is his wife, or at least will be his wife. I kind of spoiled it a little bit, but she will be his wife because he proposes to her using a handmade ring he made. So, yeah, it's very cute. It's very cute, and they are going to be engaged. But then he's suddenly called back in to help with an investigation when in the mushroom park that Tim had instated. Somebody was walking through the park with their pet ladybug, because it's the wall, of course. Everything's an inch tall in here. So obviously ladybugs would have become domesticated. They go to investigate. She lets it off its leash to go to the bathroom, and then she discovers the delivery guy's dead body. So, yeah. And that's when Harv gets called into work and called in to investigate. He's called in to investigate because he's A, he's a war hero, and Tim's personal guard trust him, and B, Tim personally requested him by name because, again, he's a war hero and it'll look better to him. And Ernesto, if you remember him, Ernesto actually remarks that he feels like he has a theory and that it might have been a cricket, which Harv immediately doubts because it's a little bit too visible. And if it's just a cricket, then why did they call him in? And they do quickly point out that since he's a war hero and since Tim requested him personally by name, that it would sound a lot better if it came from him rather than one of his underlings. Only for Harv to remark that he's not going to be delivering a report and that they can deal with it themselves. And then he goes back home. At which point, again, as I've previously explained to you guys, he has a bit of a nightmare where he remembers all the atrocities that happened during the wall and specifically the war, and remembers that even though he was able to save a lot of people, he does remember that he wasn't able to save most of them, and the faces of the people he failed to save haunt him deep in his memory. And his wife even wakes him up because she notices that he's having a bad dream, and that he shouldn't be so worried. And he merely remarks that he knows he saved a lot of people, but not only does he have lingering regrets about the people he didn't save, but that he wants to make sure that he's keeping everybody safe now. He wants to keep as many people as he can safe inside the wall, so that nobody else has to die on his watch. And is quick to point out that if nobody is able to be safe in the mushroom park, then what's going on inside the wall? So yeah, he quickly voices his concern about what's going on, and then he decides that he is going to help with the investigation and help consider what's going on and why people are dying inside the wall all of a sudden. But he does remark that it'll probably be an easy job because, again, he believes it's just a cricket. Although as we find out, it's not, because Mia. She goes to the clothing store to check on the new guy, only for the new guy to not report in, and she remarks that he must have gotten lost. But then as we find out, no, he hasn't gotten lost. He was killed inside his own home, and then was disemboweled and strung everywhere and hung on the wall like a trophy. So no, he's not okay. In fact, he's very much dead. So. Yeah, the wall is probably the most interesting part of this series because it's one of those things where they split up. Where in the last episode in the last season they split up the slice of life elements between the Schlorpians with the more serialized elements from the wall, and then eventually the wall just took over and got its own episode, and I'm assuming that's going to happen with this season as well. But I'm interested to see where this new season is going to go, because the last season was a rebellion in the wall. This season is going to be a murder mystery, and I'm interested to see what's going to happen with that. So, yeah, I'm interested to see how that's going to go down. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this. It's murder mystery time. It's going to be interesting. But in any case, that's my review of Solar Opposites. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and Twitter in the description below. And also, be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks, and I'm always saying thanks. So be sure to check those out in the description below as well. Also, if you want to see more videos from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is the video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me and what YouTube thinks you will like based on that. So, if you want to try something new or see more of what you like, then be sure to check either of those videos out. But, regardless of whether or not you do any or all of those things, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!